Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our expert panel discussion, how to boost fleet management efficiency across North America. North America is known for its preference for open-end leasing. It has predominantly a tool of trade fleet. For these fleets, maximizing the utilization is key, but the market is also open for innovation in electrification, and why not mobility. Ladies and gentlemen, to know if all this is possible, we have invited three experts. May I welcome Kimberly FISCHER. Kimberly FISCHER is the Global Manager Travel and Fleet at National Oilwell Varco. Kimberly, welcome.
Thank you.
Our second guest is Tom Callahan. Tom is the CEO of fleet management company Donlen. Tom, welcome in this panel discussion.
Thank you, Stephen.
And finally, we have Vinzenz, President Corporate Sales at Sixt. Vinzenz, also to you, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Stephen.
So we are going to discuss fleet efficiency across North America. And Kimberly, I would like to start with you. You are the fleet manager in our club. Kimberly, can you first of all tell us how many vehicles do you manage on a global level and in North America?
So globally right now, sort of under my umbrella is about 6,000 units. In North America specific, we're probably with equipment and rolling fleet, we're at about 5,000.
Okay. Kimberly, North America seems quite an easy region in terms of vehicle fleet management. There is one language. It has a good supplier offering. It has similar best practices across the US and Canada. What makes it challenging for you and you think for other fleet managers? And secondly, how to overcome those challenges?
So I think that for the last year or two and into this year, I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be supplier shortages that we're experiencing, which is really on a global level. But in the US, I think that it becomes an even bigger issue, especially for somebody that's in my industry, which is oil and gas. We've had tough market conditions for the last several years, so our replacement policies have not been followed as stringently as they would have been normally, just because we've had to extend that. So as I look into 2022 and that model ordering, I have some concerns about supply. And I think that for a lot of fleet managers, it has become even exponentially more important to not just have that great relationship with your manufacturers and your leasing companies and the various vendors that you use, to be aware of kind of what the market conditions are and where the shortages are going to be and how you can sort of navigate through that. But also just as important, that I think has become exponentially more important, is to communicate that with our internal shareholders, to say, hey, because our market conditions have been so bad the last couple of years, coupled that now with the market conditions for manufacturers and getting deliveries, here's what you kind of need to be aware of. And instead of sort of this last minute ordering, which we historically have done, we need to do a better job of planning, because that 12 to 14 week delivery time may be extended extensively. Like just being able to find vehicles may be a bit harder in 2022 than we've ever experienced. And so for a lot of my peers that I've spoken to, one of the big things that we're focusing on is also just educating internally, like here's how this is going to affect us, and we need to plan accordingly, or we're going to have some challenges in meeting our customer demands.
Okay. Tom, you are the CEO of Donlen, a leasing and fleet management company. Can you give us an idea about how many vehicles you manage today in North America?
We manage approximately 250,000 vehicles in North America, US and Canada.
Okay. Are there mostly vans, pickups, trucks?
The majority are vans and pickups. In North America, it's a tool of trade, like you said, and probably 70% of our collateral is vans and trucks of various classes.
Okay. How is the shortage in supply affecting you as a service supplier for many fleet customers across North America?
It's definitely affecting us. Supply chain is critical. The chip shortage is affecting us. Lead times are affecting us. It's affecting some of our replacement as well. Fleets are extending replacements. We're working with the OEMs and trying to get as granular as we can around the supply chain. But there's no question, as Kimberly said, it's an ongoing challenge. And I think we've all read that I think OEMs are going to take some steps to control more of that in the future.
Okay. Tom, I would like to continue with you. The supplier market, both in terms of fleet management and on the OEM side, seems very corporate oriented and a corporate customer driven. How do you see the supplier market evolve in the near future? Do you expect any movements?
Yes, I see, it's a corporate market, but I definitely see movement toward more mobility solutions in certain areas in the US and Canada around dense areas. We have several of our clients that have asked for pilots in both electrification and in areas of dense urban areas where they may not need a dedicated corporate vehicle. We've also seen interest in pooled management as well. And again, continued emphasis on strategic consulting, how best to look at a fleet in totality and figure out what's the best use case, and also with electrification, how best to pilot something effective.
Vinzenz, I come to you. Since when is Sixt active across North America?
We are active in North America since 2011, so almost 10 years now. And we serve a 3-digit number of branches, including 38 out of the 40 biggest airports.
Okay. The answer of Tom may sound very nice for you, because he is referring also that there could be in North America a demand for more flexibility, innovation, and we know from Europe, where your headquarters is, that Sixt is often at the forefront of innovation. Now, North America is also known for its lack of benefit vehicles and its experience with job need and functional cars. Knowing that cost efficiency, certainly in these times, particular times, it's really critical. Do you expect that the North American fleet market will change in terms of type of vehicles, size of vehicles, how they are going to use the vehicles?
That's a very interesting question. It combines various questions, by the way. Probably let me add to what Tom said before. It is very interesting that the very transparent model how fleet managers work in the US is now a disadvantage to those companies. Imagine the European fleet managers much more, and leasing companies following much more operating lease model. It is pretty clear that they now have big wins in terms of money due to the lower mileage, less tire consumption, less mileage on the car due to the pandemic where they didn't drive. Pretty clear is that there is a change coming up as well in the fleet environment of American fleets. For sure, they will shrink, but pretty clear to achieve efficiency in fleet, it is much more to use tools like share, rent, ride, and other services, which bring flexibility and additional services to the final consumer, who mainly as well is a corporate customer. Mm-hmm. Interesting in that respect is that corporate and B2C demand grow together in that respect. Mm-hmm. Because when you have your app, like we offer one in Europe, but as well in the US, we offer those apps and as well subscription programs and everything, you use them for corporate purpose or for private purpose, but then it grows into one. So there we see a big chance, like the Amazon wheel, mm-hmm. you know, okay. That due to cross-selling and upselling of new solutions, we can win more business in the core as well. And this is the reason why we add services like e-scooters and others.
Kimberly, are you open for those new innovations that Vinzenz is also mentioning in his answer, and perhaps even to change a little bit the financing, the funding, the management of your fleet to eliminate risks in the future?
So sharing vehicles is not a good fit, at least for our organization. We have very specific tool of the trade with additional equipment, welders, service bodies that make that very difficult to share a vehicle. What we are looking at is within business groups that use the same types of vehicles, can we downsize the vehicle they're using to be a little bit more fuel efficient? Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. We're also tied to oil and gas, so it's a tricky slide because we're not necessarily against fuel usage. Having said that, our company is a services company. We develop technology as well as equipment, and we recognize that while we've been around for 100+ years, if we want to be around for another 100+ years, we have to adapt to the alternate fuel sort of way of thinking in the direction that the world seems to be moving. And so we are investing in technologies that would help, whether it be solar or wind or equipment that can also be adapted for those sort of streams for energy uses as well. So this is the first time that I've ever had any sort of interest in doing electric vehicles, which I'm sort of a little bit excited about, that we may actually do a pilot on a very small scale, because again, for the sort of what we call our bread and butter vehicle, that's not an option right now. But for where we can downsize and do electric, we are for the first time ever sort of taking a look at that, and does it make sense, and can we do a small pilot and then expand on that if it does make sense for our usage.
Okay, would like to continue about fleet electrification, because this is of course also a topic that is interesting in other regions. We have read with the entrance of the new Biden administration, the huge investment plans in terms of electrification, investments to create jobs and so on. I have it here on the screen. The new Biden administration wants to invest $174 billion to win the EV market in the US. Tom, what do you think about that, and how will that drive forward fleet electrification?
I think it's definitely going to drive forward. That's a big investment. It's a 2.25 overall infrastructure budget. A lot of it is also in some social infrastructure as well, over 800 billion. So it's going to jumpstart things. The devil's in the detail regarding this. These goals, 2050, net carbon emission neutral, a reduction in emissions to 2005 levels, 52% below 2005 levels by 2030. So these are aggressive goals, but you have to commend the leadership around it. And again, I think that's going to spur a lot of investment. You've seen all the OEMs basically saying between 2030 to 2035, they're going to be predominantly electrified with their fleets as well. I also think we're seeing, to Kimberly's point, additional electrification of vehicles in vans and trucks, which I think in our space will spur the adoption more than previously. So that's an exciting time, because I now think not only the infrastructure has a chance to get there, the charging stations, the speed, the battery infrastructure as well, which frankly, from a US perspective, we're behind China and Europe as far as overall development there. But together with the additional OEMs coming in with vans and trucks, I think it's going to spur adoption faster.
Okay, I see Vinzenz nodding yes. Vinzenz, a brief comment perhaps?
Yeah, you know, I'm not in a position to be in that detail what Biden says there. It's pretty clear. He states that the Paris Agreement is coming back into play. And I see some states like California being very progressive since quite a while, and some cities as well. But we need to understand that the pure size of the country and how the size supports the different use cases and distances is a big difference to Europe. So I would see that coming rapidly into the US. They have a very strong base with Tesla, even that the volumes are not as big. We see a big competition from China. The Europeans are coming as well into that segment. Everybody is changing their infrastructure to build those cars. So pretty clear they will come to the US, and we will face a big growth.
Okay, would like to continue with Kimberly. Kimberly, let's talk about connectivity and telematics. Is it a given or is it recommended to equip your fleet with connectivity and telematics across North America?
So we order everything now with connectivity, and we do have a lot of business units who utilize that. We are also rolling out a telematics program throughout North America, and that's not optional. Every vehicle in our fleet will have telematics, and I'm really excited about it. I think that it will allow us to sort of harness some data that we've never been able to access, both in driver behavior and the vehicles themselves, and help with life cycling on the vehicles. Kind of a second phase of that, we do a lot of, our industry is known for lots of idle time. And I'm excited to sort of take a look at that and see if we can't shrink that. We'll never do away with all of it, but I'd like to shrink some of that idle time. And you can't do that if you don't have the data. So I'm super excited about it.
Tom, perhaps to continue, I know that Donlen has quite some expertise when it comes to connectivity and telematics. Of course, we have a global fleet audience, and perhaps they are living in regions where there might be still some concerns about technology and connectivity. What would be your advice to them when they come into North America, have a fleet over there? Do they need to equip their vehicles with telematics?
I would say yes. My personal view is every vehicle now is going to be pretty much equipped with the ability to deal with telematics, but I think it makes all the products and services within fleet better if you have telematics. For some of the same things that Kimberly talked about, my goal would basically for every one of our customers to be on it. I think with you're dealing with North America and you're dealing with cost optimization, cost savings, things like that, work trucks, I think telematics is a huge piece of that. You know, we've been at this for 10+ years. We started with driver behavior, driver training, that kind of thing. Now it's become a safety and a productivity tool. It can help with emission controls as well, utilization. So it's a very powerful tool to utilize. And I think go forward, it's going to be even more impactful. The adoption rate, I think, started with larger fleets and is moving through to even smaller fleets. It's just a huge enabler for everything we do in fleet management. The other thing I would recommend to anybody, though, understand the use case, though. Understand why you're using it, the ROI, and somebody in the company must be a champion at the senior level to make sure it happens. We have unfortunately been sometimes when you go back and check to see how well did that use case meet the ROI, we're disappointed because we didn't do the homework up front. So understand exactly why you're using it, check yourself, set milestones, get a champion within your company to drive it.
Okay, perfect. Vinzenz, we are working from home. We are working from home a lot. Will working from home have an impact on the duration and the type of fleet contracts in North America?
Yes, and it already has an impact on our business. In the B2B context, we are facing an enormous demand to increase the flexibility of company fleets. With a growing share of mobile work, employees' expectations of company car features are changing. And employees want to vary between car model sizes, between internal combustion and electric cars, and overall tend to get by with smaller mileage packages compared to pre-pandemic times. So companies would like to transform their rather rigid fleet into a flexible fleet, but also better cost controlling depending on the economic situation of the company. And there I'm fully with Tom, where we find a very different landscape in Europe than in the US. It is very useful to implement the connectivity tools to steer the fleet, which is not the case here, at least in Western Europe. In the UK it is, and in Central Europe, but not as much in the countries where we live.
Okay. Tom, what is the main difference in fleet management between Canada and the US?
One of the differences in Canada is a smaller fleet market. Average fleet size in Canada, 35 to 70 vehicles. So you have to keep that in mind. At the same time, though, there's also high energy out in Western Canada. There's been some impact on the lockdown. Canada's had some significant lockdown challenges throughout that. So that's part of the difference as well. The other thing too, just as to be mindful, be very specific to the Canadian needs, make sure that you're not US centric, and that the customer facing piece that we found is better Canadian, so that we don't forget that culture is very important. So when it's North America, just make sure you look at both US and Canada, and you treat Canada as more than an accommodation.
Okay. Kimberly, what is your main tip for fleet managers stepping into the North American fleet marketplace?
So I'm going to piggyback onto what Tom said. Recognize that they're not the same countries. Ask questions that are specific to the country you're going into, whether that be the US or Canada, because there are going to be, it doesn't seem like there would be differences, but there really are. And what I have found is, and this is really true of as you go globally anywhere, make sure that you understand how business is being done. So I can have the same division in the US and the same division in Canada, but they don't necessarily perform the same way. And so their needs from a vehicle perspective may not be the same. So make sure to ask questions internally, but also ask questions of your vendors, and not just your current vendors, but potential vendors. Because the other thing I have found is if you sort of can build a network of vendors that you can rely on, sometimes your current vendor defaults to how you do business, which is fine, but sometimes you need a little bit of innovation, and that sometimes comes from potential vendors, not current vendors. So I would say sort of ask questions, but don't limit who you're asking your questions of.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we need to end this panel discussion here. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you to the experts. I would like to thank Kimberly Fischer, Tom Callahan, and Vinzenz for their insights. We have learned more about the fleet management marketplace in North America, with some key difference between the US and Canada. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.